Welcome to an update on the Paycheck Protection Program, commonly known as PPP. This update is provided by the Family Business Education Initiative, continuing series on responding to COVID-19. I'm Mark Scott, Director of the Veterans Business Outreach Center here at Mississippi State University. VBARCs are one of the Small Business Administration resource partners. Although I am primarily focused on veterans and veteran spouses, today we're going to talk about the Paycheck Protection Program that affects all of small business across the United States. Today I will serve as your host, and with me is Mr. Buddy Mortimer, President and CEO of Bank of Kilmichael, who will provide us the all-important lender perspective about the program. We're going to cover a variety of topics today, including an overview of the Paycheck Protection Program. And the second round that we're going to talk about, there's little differences between a first draw and second draw, and we'll cover what that actually means. Talk a little bit about the high-level loan calculation, what you would be eligible for as far as a loan depending on your type of business, how the PPP funds can be used, one of the most important topics, where to apply and how to apply, and what documentation the lender is going to look for as you go through the loan application. And we'll close out talking about two important subjects, of course, is the forgiveness of that loan and additional SBA resources that are out there to help you navigate through this process. So first, let me turn to Mr. Buddy Mortimer, and like I said, President and CEO of the Bank of Kilmichael. Thank you, Buddy, for taking the time out of your hectic schedule, especially during the PPP process, to join us and give us the lender perspective. So, Bank of Kilmichael, give us a little bit of overview of Bank of Kilmichael and specifically, what is a CDFI?
Thank you, Mark. Well, the Bank of Kilmichael has been around since 1904. We were founded by my grandfather and several other gentlemen. We have about $220 million in assets. We have 4 branches located in Winona, Kilmichael, Mathiston, and Eupora, with a full-service ATM in Kosciuszko, and a soon-to-be-opened branch in Ackerman, Mississippi. So we are a CDFI bank, and CDFI stands for Community Development Financial Institution. And it is a certification by the U.S. Treasury Department. And what that means is part of our mission is to provide affordable lending and financial products to distressed areas, underserved, distressed areas in our target market. And our target market is the counties between basically Carroll County and Oktibbeha County. We provide small business loans, affordable housing loans, and commercial real estate loans. So that's part of our mission.
Great. And as we go forward, you'll see how important that CDFIs are in the process for helping truly small businesses with the Paycheck Protection Program. So we are in now the Paycheck Protection Program Round 2. It was signed into law on the 27th of December of last year, 2020, and it is a forgivable program created to help small businesses stay afloat during COVID-19. It is a continuation, obviously, by saying round 2, there must have been a first round of the Paycheck Protection Program. Now, Buddy, you've been involved, and Bank of Kilmichael have been involved since PPP started, I think, last March.
Correct.
Can you chat a little bit about the overall purpose of PPP and some examples you've seen of successes?
Well, the PPP program was put in place in March, I believe, of last year by the Treasury Department, Secretary Mnuchin, because they were about to shut the economy down. I mean, small businesses, as we recall, I mean, everything was shut down except for essential businesses, and they had to come up with some way to keep those businesses alive during the shutdown period. And I think it was a stroke of genius, really, the way they came up with utilizing the SBA and the commercial banking system particularly community banks, because we know our customers and we know who needs the money. And they funded it through the SBA, and we're familiar with the SBA. Most of us were SBA lenders already. So the way that they structured it, I thought was really smart, because we were the ones that were controlling the money and the recipients, the small businesses who actually needed it. So, and it really saved hundreds of thousands of jobs across the country, and thousands of jobs in Mississippi and in our market area. So it was a good program, still is.
Now for round 2, and we'll dive into this in a little bit, is that if you didn't take advantage of the PPP in the first round, you can still do it in the second round. And we'll call those first draw borrowers. But if you did get a PPP in the first round, you can get another one in the second round to continue to help you. And we'll talk about the differences in when you do a second draw as a borrower. So there's some key dates out there. Again, this program was passed in December 2020, opened up in January 11th, and CDFIs were actually the only ones allowed to lend, because SBA was targeting truly small businesses in rural communities and underserved markets to make sure that they were able to take advantage of PPP. Since then, it's opened up to most small business, and most other lenders are participating in the second round of PPP. Key dates, couple key dates is 31 March is when the program ends. And of course, there's a finite amount of funding associated with this program. So any advice about these dates?
Just get to your bank before March 31st.
Right.
With the application.
Yeah. And so let's look at who's eligible for a PPP. And you can see from this list, it's about every small business that's out there. Sole proprietors, independent contractors, and I'll ask you to talk about how 1099 employees or 1099 contractors are affected. But basically, it's any small business that's out there, plus what is not typical or atypical is that nonprofits are eligible for PPP first and second draw, which is something SBA usually is not involved in the loan process. So you've probably seen all types of businesses. Can you talk about the different types of businesses and how it's helped them?
Well, we virtually lent to most of the ones on that list. Churches, as a nonprofit, they improved the eligibility from round 1 to round 2 to include some that they missed in round 1, like the 501c3, 6,
right.
And I think some farmers were excluded in round 1 that didn't have the right business set up, so they made up for that in round 2. So it's been real effective at reaching all forms of businesses.
Yeah. And in fact, I think we, as a VBOC, helped our local church, who obviously had the largest daycare in our city, apply and were accepted for PPP, and I think they're on to round 2 as well. So I'm sure you've helped some nonprofits, faith-based organizations as well.
Absolutely. I think we've helped out 5 or 6 churches in our market area, daycare centers.
Yeah.
So
great. Now, as I mentioned a little bit at the start, that going into round 2, if you did not apply for PPP for whatever reason the first go around, you can do an initial or first draw. And the rules for a first draw are very similar to what they were back in March. And I think it's what's defined, and most people don't really realize this, a small business is defined in most categories, anything less than 500 for that draw. And I think it's 2.5 times your monthly payroll costs with a limit of $10 million. So any comments about the first draw? I know you were heavily involved in first draw, and y'all did quite a few loans in the first draw. Have you seen people coming in for first draw this go around?
We actually have. Surprisingly, it was surprising to me that I guess the people that didn't take advantage of the first draw were like, I'm not going to miss out this time. So we're seeing more than I expected of first draw participants in this second draw period.
And I think in our discussion yesterday is that, you know, the process really got smoothed out, and as long as somebody's prepared, it goes relatively easily.
It does. Yeah. It does.
Now, a lot of people did take total advantage of the first draw, the first round of PPP. So in this round 2, there's what is called a second draw, and it's looking to continue to keep small businesses afloat, and it's really targeted. So they reduced the number to less than 300 full-time or full-time equivalent employees. One key thing now is that as you apply for a second round, you must show that you have been harmed and show that you had a reduction. And as highlighted, it's a 25% reduction that you have to show from a pay period, a quarter to a quarter. Like you mentioned, farmers are now eligible, and they can do an annual, looking at their annual revenue. And there are some characteristics. If you got a first round PPP, you must have already used all that money. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to be forgiven, but you have to have used all that money. And again, you must have been in operation since 2020. What have you seen with the second draw? Have you seen a good steady flow of
Well, we
people
have.
apply?
The key component of that slide is that third bullet point where you must demonstrate a revenue reduction of at least 25% from any calendar quarter of 19 versus 20. And what we've seen is most of the customers who qualify for that second draw experienced a greater than 25% revenue reduction in the second quarter of 2020, which is when the economy was shut down. So that's what's qualifying most of the people. And we've had several that didn't qualify because their business was not harmed that bad, ironically because of the PPP program. And there was liquidity in the markets, and their business was able to prosper, or at least remain steady during 2020.
So like you said, the key thing is that with this round, you're going to have to show financially you've been harmed.
Correct.
To qualify for the second draw. Now there are some nuances in the second draw. It's the average 2.5 monthly salary, just like the first draw for a normal business. But what this law recognized was there's some industries that have been severely harmed. The restaurant, the food service, hotel business, and so you can actually apply for 3.5 times.
That's right.
Now, one thing that, again, targeted towards small business, and they expect many small businesses, restaurants and such to apply for this, you now have a limit of $2 million in the amount of loan.
Correct, and I don't think that's a big issue. Our average loan amount, and in talking to other community banks around at least the northern part of Mississippi, the average loan amount is going to be in the $80,000 to $90,000 range. So I don't think the $2 million limit is going to be that big of an issue, especially in Mississippi.
Doesn't sound like a lot when you're talking about trillions of dollars, but to a small business, $100,000 is a lifeline.
Especially when it's forgiven. If it's a loan and at 1% and then it's forgiven, it's a lifeline.
So one of the questions, and has changed a little bit from round 1 to round 2 a little bit, is how can the funds be used? And you mentioned the key word. These funds, to be forgiven, have to be used in this manner. And most of it has to go to employees, but it's been opened up to some other opportunities for small businesses to use those funds to pay mortgage, interest, and even safety gear.
Right. That's new for this round, is the COVID safety gear. But the key is to use 60% of the funds to pay for your payroll and payroll expenses.
And we'll talk about forgiveness and how the CDFI or the local bank or your lender is important all the way through this process when we close out. So here's the chart I know you love, is where to apply.
Bank of Kilmichael.
Bank of Kilmichael. But it is with your local lender. And so, like you mentioned, what the Treasury Department and SBA realized the best way to get this funds to small business was using banks and banks that are already established through the SBA loan process. And we won't get into the details of what type of loan, but banks had the history, they had the mechanism set up, and that's why it flowed relatively easy to get money to small businesses. So again, lending institutions, and we always recommend that you have a relationship. Hopefully small businesses have a relationship with a banker, and I think that's what you found.
Yes, we have. And if you don't currently have a loan with a bank, then typically you have a checking account, and I would suggest going to that bank where you do your business, your main checking account business. We've picked up some new customers. A lot of small banks were quick to jump into the PPP lending in the first round, and we picked up customers that we couldn't or didn't have a place to go, or were getting delayed in their PPP funding. So it was a chance for the community banking industry to shine in this country nationwide, and we led with PPP lending before the mega banks really got into it.
Now, if you don't have a relationship with a bank or you're unsure, the Small Business Administration on the SBA website, sba.gov, has a program called Lender Match. And you simply put in your zip code and you can find SBA lending institutions in your area. But again, community banks have jumped on this from the start and done a great job to make sure that those true small businesses had the opportunity to stay afloat. So we mentioned we come to you, we go through the loan process. There are some terms about the PPP loan. And again, these terms come into effect if the loan is not forgiven.
Correct.
But when I come to you with my business, something unique about this loan process compared to a typical SBA loan is something, no collateral is required and no personal guarantees.
Correct.
And that's not typical in a loan.
Nor is the 1% interest.
Yeah, 1% interest.
But typically these are forgiven. The vast majority of these are forgiven.
And that, like I said, we'll talk in a second about the forgiveness process, which is very important. What are you as a lender looking for when I show up on your door and I want to get my PPP loan? They're listed here, a couple of general ones, your tax return, your payroll form, 940, 941, and bank statements.
That's typically it. There's a one-page application on the SBA website that you would need to fill out for both first and second round. And you bring that in, and along with the proof of your payroll, that's key. And typically your accountant, your CPA, can provide you that information if you don't maintain it yourself.
So there's really not a lot of documentation, and if you've been in your business or been in small business for a while, you're going to have these.
Right. And
you ought to be able to check with your like you said, your accountant. They should be able to provide those rather quickly, and then like you said, the process is now down to a one-page form relatively, and you go from there.
And typically, for us anyway, once you bring in the documentation and that one-page application, we apply to the SBA, we get your SBA loan number, and then we fund typically within 1 or 2 days.
Now, I said I've a small business. I've come in, brought all my paperwork. I've got my loan. I've used it. One of the key things is about the Paycheck Protection Program is it is a forgivable loan, which means if I do all the right things, the 60% payroll and and have all that documentation, that loan will be forgiven. Now, again, you've been heavily involved since it started in March of last year. How's the forgiveness process gone?
Well, we instruct our customers to go to the SBA website and download and fill out the one-page forgiveness application. It's a very simple form. You bring that into the bank. We submit it to the SBA along with a certification. Well, it's on that one page where the customer and the bank certifies that we use these funds appropriately for payroll, et cetera. And it usually takes, depending on the SBA, it can take up to a week or 2 weeks to get that forgiveness. Sometimes it's quicker, sometimes it's longer. Who knows why? But we typically, I think we're seeing almost 100% forgiveness of the ones that have applied for it.
So the good thing is that from the time it started in March till we moved into the second round of Paycheck Protection Program, lessons have been learned. So the program sounds like it's pretty streamlined now, either applying for the loan and applying for forgiveness.
Correct. That's correct.
And again, your CPA or yourself, make sure you keep the documentation and everything goes smooth. Want to point out, like I mentioned before, not only is the bank involved or the lender involved in you applying for the loan and getting the funds dispersed, but you're also at the end of it. You process, along with the lender, the forgiveness program. So it's a cradle to grave.
True.
Maybe that's not the right example, but it's a complete cycle. That's why the banker and is probably very important to your business right now.
Correct. And I want to point out, you don't have to go to the bank that made you the initial PPP loan, but it is 100 times easier if you do for the second loan.
Excellent point. It's in fact in some of the websites you see, if you go back to your original first PPP, they know you, they've got all the process, and it goes even quicker. Great
Correct.
point. As we close out talking about the Paycheck Protection Program, is there any closing comments you want to make about the PPP? I know you see it as a success. You see it as the SBA and the Treasury Department got it right, the way to do it. So any closing comments or advice for the lender out there thinking about the PPP program? Well,
I think most lenders are fully engaged in it right now. Even the mega banks, they finally came around. But it's been really one of the better government assistance programs that I've been aware of in my career. It has been targeted and it has saved businesses and saved jobs.
Well, Buddy, I want to thank you for your time and your candor about the program, and thank all your employees at the bank for making this process smooth for small business, because there's a lot of stress on small business owners right now.
And you hit the nail on the head. We had employees that were staying at the bank literally all night in the early days of the PPP getting these things done, because it was all new to us. It was all new to the SBA, and our employees really deserve all the credit. Not only our bank, but all the other banks around the country that made this happen. So that's somewhat a summary on the Paycheck Protection Program, round 2. There are other small business relief programs out there. Very simple, visit SBA.gov, the SBA, the Small Business Administration website. There might be other programs out there that might fit your small business. Economic injury disaster loan, the EIDL loan, express bridge loans. There's some debt relief if you already have a 7A loan or 504 loan that's maybe an opportunity for you. There's a new one if you run a theater or comedy show, or called the Shuttered Venues Operators Grant. That's targeted at, like I mentioned, some of the entertainment type business venues that have really suffered. So check those out. Now, if you have questions about any of those, SBA has resource partners. Like I mentioned, I'm the part of the Veterans Business Outreach Center. We are SBA resource partner.
There's small business development centers all through each state that you're in that can assist you in identifying the right relief package for you. Women's Business Center and SCORE, which is volunteered executives that look at businesses, and they can also guide you. So there's plenty of assistance out there. To find the closest resource partner, go to that SBA.gov website again and just look at local assistance. Again, put your zip code in. You can find a resource partner near you. You can also find a lending institution near you that can help you go through the process. So again, SBA.gov, a lot of information out there about the relief packages to help your businesses. Again, Buddy, thank you for sharing your thoughts on the Paycheck Protection Program. And to all the small business owners and entrepreneurs out there, good luck. If you have any questions, find one of the SBA resource partners, and we'll make sure we'll navigate you to the right answer. Thank you.